Welcome. It's the Marketing B-Sides. I'm your host, Tom Hootman. Thanks for joining me. For the uninitiated, this is a podcast where every single one of you is a marketer. Not a single one of us has it figured out, or even pretends to, which is great. It's a learning experience because sometimes it's about the friends we make along the way, which is a nice segue into the friends I've made along the way. One of them being today's guest, who honestly, I love this section because I get to record and talk about the person, and I hope they listen to it and they get to hear me just layer effusive praise and what I really admire about them on top of them because I'm too embarrassed to tell them to their face. So it's like a little Tom Hootman confessional booth about how amazing I think these people are. I really admire this guest. I've known this guest. I sold tacos with this guest. You've heard me talk about how I used to work in a Mexican restaurant and it was crazy busy and so much more stressful than you would think margaritas and tacos should be. And we used to say to each other, like, hey, we're just making tacos here. Like literally, this is the least important thing in the world. So I was doing the least important thing in the world with this guest for quite some time, back when I think they were still an undergrad. And gradually over the years, we would run into each other, we'd see each other, we stayed in touch via social media. And I've always admired the path this person took. It's Brant Moriarity, by the way, is his name. I don't know why I'm holding back the name like it's a surprise guess. So what I love about Brant is he's one of the sharpest witted people I've ever met. And he uses it mostly for positivity. I've known a lot of people, myself included, who it's really easy to turn that into a negative and be too cool for school and not want to do new things. He's always been fearless about trying something new or talking about his feelings or being open and out there. He was a religious studies major when I met him. Bartending, serving, shows up at IU, is working in admissions, goes into Kelley School of Business. He is now helping reformat and revamp K201 computers in business into what it is going to be or is now for the modern age. I mean, for a while, he was even doing like aerial yoga, right? Like the guy is fearless. Really, truly wonderful conversation with a magnificent person who I hold in high regard, and a fascinating conversation about, holy shit, AI is changing everything. And I teach at the business school, at a prestigious business school, the Indiana University Kelley School of Business. How is that impacting what we do, and how do we need to change to make certain that we are putting our best foot forward to foster and cultivate the next generation of brilliant business people? I had to say it in that voice because it sounded so textbook, and so I apologize. It's a great episode. Thanks for joining. Again, Marketing B-Sides. Like, subscribe, don't subscribe, but I prefer you liked and subscribed. Give us feedback, write a review. You can find us wherever quality podcasts are sold. Enjoy the show. Kathleen and Brant, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. You're all dressed up. I love this. You get the most well-dressed award.
Can I tell you, I have a reputation to uphold around here, and I'm one of the best dressed faculty in my department, and I usually have a pocket square, but I took that out just so I don't want to be too prestige. I don't, I'm down to earth kind of guy.
You're higher ed to the core.
Apparently so. I had elbow patches on yesterday.
I was going to make an elbow patch joke.
Yeah. We're there.
How long have you been with Indiana University?
I've been with IU for 23 years. Been with Kelley for 19 of those 23 years.
So you just started?
Yeah. Yeah. My first job outside of my undergraduate degree was at IU. So I came from student to support staff at the admissions office.
So that's right. You were in admissions, right?
Yep. Like worked at 2001 or so through 2007. Admissions.
And now you're at the Kelley School of Business.
The Kelley School of Business, sir.
Very, very prominent, well-regarded.
It has been
business school.
I had no idea how I got here, but I'm glad I did. That's pretty much
They'll let anybody in.
I literally fell into this teaching job on a Friday to start on a Monday. I had not applied, not even considered it, but I was asked to fill an adjunct position that somebody else couldn't fill because they went on sabbatical. And I was somebody that somebody knew who made the decision to call me up. Fell into it.
So you got it through your network, literally.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. I worked with the boss's husband, having no connection to the actual boss of the department at the time, but the husband knew who I was and said, hey, why don't you ask Brant? And then she did.
It's fascinating. I know you work predominantly, it's K201, right? So it's predominantly freshmen?
Almost all freshmen. Yes.
I know that, Kelley, we won't talk about the network. Kelley kind of sells the network, right?
Yeah.
You're a Kelley grad. You can go meet other Kelley grads and travel in a murder of Kelley grads.
Yes.
But it's interesting because like I get asked a lot when I run into Kelley students or when I'm on campus about like the question I always get is about network and like how
Sure.
do you network? Because there's like this push, there's like this, what's the formula to get my network built? And I was like, well, no, like the first thing, like don't think about your network.
Yeah.
You're just, I joke with people like all I do, I talk to people for a living now.
Yeah.
And I take meetings every day and I talk to people who introduce me to people. They could turn into a client. They could introduce me to someone who could turn into a client.
You
Or
never know.
you never know. Or it's someone who knows someone who's like a data integration specialist and the next client in the door has a unique data problem and I need help with it.
Yeah.
Right. Like
You can't fabricate it. Like, you have to be a genuinely curious person who wants to connect with people.
and you cannot expect fucking shit from it. Like you
No.
have to go into it thinking like if there's no like I had 4 meetings today and 3 of them referred me, so that's 3 out of 75%. No, like you just cannot do. The second you release that, it's like that's when things happen.
Because you enjoy the process too.
Yeah.
That is looking for the end result. You're enjoying the process of it.
Yeah. There isn't the I do meet with grads and it's like I want to interrupt them kind of halfway through and be like, just ask me. I'm not hiring, but like just fucking ask, right? Like it's okay.
How can you
You could
help me?
just ask. It's fine. So for those who are uninitiated on
Sure.
what I'll call the blissful world of K201, what is it? And what has it been? And also, the reason I reached out to you about this is
Yeah.
because you had posted, I think, on LinkedIn or I saw online that K201 is moving to a different place in the future. So can you educate us a bit on what K201 is and where it's going?
Yeah. This could take hours, but I won't.
This is the episode 1 of a 5-episode
Right? There's a whole
podcast.
series, right? So the full picture of K201, it was established first like in 1967. It's been part of the Kelley, before it was Kelley, part of the business school at IU's curriculum since the late 1960s. And it was called the Computer in Business since then. And of course, that very vague name led us to be able to adapt to whatever businesses needed for computing type skills. I learned of this. The very first iteration of the course was programming mainframe computers using punch cards in a language called Fortran. Things that I have no idea what it even means, but that's what this course was taught back in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it had been through major iterations since then. I began teaching in the early 2000s, mid 2000s here, and we were doing focusing on data analysis and data management. We were doing relational databases and Excel stuff for analyzing data and kind of helping freshman students get a handle on how to manage that data, how to analyze it, how to get insights from it. And that's been the course since my 19 years of teaching it. It hasn't changed much since then. We have introduced new tools like Power Query and Power BI into the curriculum at an entry level because other classes upstream from us also wanted students to be able to extend their skills in those particular tools. So we kind of are able to modify our curriculum to get freshman students more prepared for other classes downstream and be able to extend their skill sets further. But all this kind of changed for us in December of last year when the deans and other leadership at Kelley realized this AI shift is changing the way people work. And if our freshmen aren't getting introduced to how to use these new powerful tools in genuine, strategic, ethical, effective ways, we're doing them a disservice when they graduate by not having those skills. And it wasn't just our course. There's a whole series of courses being kind of transformed into integrating AI in some capacity appropriate for their field, appropriate for their course, appropriate for their industry. We're just kind of the first stop in that journey for our freshman students. But when I first started as the director, one of my first tasks was to rename the course. Now, to rename a course that's been the same name since 1967 is
No
not
pressure.
not the easiest task because it's not just our course here in Bloomington. All 9 campuses offer or could offer a K201, the Computer in Business course. Only 2 are Kelley schools. Bloomington and Indianapolis are only the Kelley schools, but every other campus could offer it. So to get the approval, not just of our department, our undergraduate program, but also all 9 campuses, that was quite a challenge. So I kind of began talking to stakeholders of courses past us that have people that rely on the skills our students are learning for ideas for what might make a better name for the course, IU Indianapolis was our main collaborator as well, because they were also the Kelley school. But we had an idea for incorporating information systems and decision making into our core name to be able to have some more obvious direction as to what our course covers. Because the computer business, so vague. No one knew what
It's
we
the
were.
most vague thing ever now.
Very, very big. But it has served us well to be able to quickly adapt without having to go through the process of changing our course description or changing the course name, because it was the computer and business. We taught computing, technology, and business. But that process was an interesting process for me, my very first kind of attempt at doing something like that. And of course, it passed our school, no problem. But when it get out to the other 9 campuses, there was a remonstrance held on it saying, wait a minute, this will impact all of us. So let's meet and discuss and have a dialogue. So I
My
navigated.
peeps up in South Bend put their foot down, didn't they?
Yeah. It was one of those, exactly. St. Joe County. That was the first kind of me navigating that process. But the deans here trusted me to deal with that. So I met with them all on a Zoom call, and we were all there, and I discussed kind of our framing of the course name and how we're approaching it, and how there's flexibility in how other campuses might approach it, because we have 25 faculty members. We have a support system here that covers this course, whereas some campuses, only one person covers the entire course, right? So we can't expect them to do what we can do here with almost no resources. But I was able to navigate that pretty well, and then it got a second vote, and everyone passed it, and that's been our name change since 1967 is now Foundations of Business Information Systems and Decision Making. Harder to say.
Catchy.
Yeah, it wasn't about really marketing, but so we still call it K201, right? But I
Yeah.
think that course name being something more specific allowed us to now realize what we're actually doing here. We're helping students understand the technology they'll be accessing in business to make decisions. And before that, it was like computer and business.
Computer business. You
Yeah.
learn how, right?
Yeah,
Like,
right. It used to be a typing class. So we have, so a direction was now kind of formed with this new title. And we've been kind of growing since then, iterating and a major new changes coming in the fall.
so would you say this is the biggest change you've implemented as in your department since you've been there?
The name change was now, but this next change coming up is 1,000 times more involved.
Tell me about that.
So this is interesting. So the course, since its inception, I believe, always had 2 components to it. An in-person lab where 30 or 40 students in a group were able to work with computers, for example. And then in 1 day a week, large lecture hall where you discussed broader concepts involving emerging technologies in business. And that separation of lab and lecture made it very hard for freshman students to actually connect the concepts they're learning in lecture to what they're doing in lab. I mean, there was often 3 days in between, different instructor, different modality, 250 students in one room, 30. This fall, we're now combining those efforts into 2 75-minute classes. So not only are we getting rid of that separation physically, we're also getting rid of that separation conceptually. We're kind of weaving in these managerial frameworks and managerial scenarios into every tool that we're teaching them, every concept we're teaching them. So they have the context of how this might be valuable to them, not now, but 5 years from now, 7 years from now, when they're making decisions. We're introducing more modernized tools. We've always used Microsoft Access as a way of teaching relational databases in a very easy to use graphical interface, click buttons and make things happen. And no matter how he framed it, students always believed they were learning how to use Microsoft Access, not the concepts behind relational database structure.
And bad news for them. Like once you get us, so no one uses Access for anything ever.
Always been the feedback is that why are we learning this useless tool? Because they couldn't quite get behind
Concepts versus tools.
Yeah. So now we're moving to SQL Server and VS Code, where they're going to be learning how to actually code in SQL, which they're going to be not happy about that because it's harder to do than click buttons to make queries happen. So we're modernizing the tools that we're using that are more appropriate for the kinds of things they might see in the real world with different tools, introducing more Power BI, more Power Query, Databricks as a kind of an online platform for synthesizing structured data and unstructured data to make decisions. So we're kind of introducing all these new tools that are more modern and weaving into it the way of extending their knowledge with AI tools in the classroom as well, not as a substitute for learning, but as an extension and a kind of an accelerator to learn concepts or to test out ideas and get prototypes from the AI tools. If they can articulate a requirement for some kind of system, we're going to teach them how they can use AI to just see what it might look like if their
Yeah.
idea came to realization. All kinds of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the grads that we've been fortunate enough to hire who are fantastic, the feedback we've gotten it feels like you're changing has been, we didn't learn any of this.
Right.
Right? Like real world, not just working with clients and solving problems, but even like the training. I think the concepts helps them learn Google Ads management or Meta Ads management much more quickly and efficiently, prepares them for that. But connecting those dots, they feel like or felt like, I didn't learn any of this. Well, you learned the concepts, you practiced the concepts that enabled you to be able to learn this in
Works different in real life.
in 8 to 10 weeks versus 8 to 10 months in a full apprenticeship. It's interesting because grads we've hired have moved through training and been remarkable. What takes the longest is the soft skills,
Yeah.
is client management, is the live fire of like,
Yeah.
okay, you launched a new campaign and it's fucking in the basement.
Yeah.
What are you going to do differently next week? Those are the things that you only get through
This is the
experience.
most wonderful thing. The main shift in how we are approaching the class is this build, adapt, defend framework to help students learn that if you're working on something and you have a possible solution for it, but then something disrupts that plan, a client has changed their funding for it, a stakeholder has changed what they want to focus on, a requirement has changed of what you've already built, how do we adapt to that? Helping students learn how to think on the fly to adapt to what they've already done to meet a new requirement is the biggest shift in our course that we're doing, pedagogically speaking, that we haven't done before. I used a fancy word. Okay.
Pedagogically.
Oh man, higher ed, bitches.
I don't even know how to spell pedagogically.
You don't have to.
An adverb meaning in a way that relates to teaching education or instructional methods for those of you playing the home game. It's fuck.
Hey, yeah, how we're delivering the content has changed to be able to make our students more adaptive to things. Because we have seen countless times, Tom, where students they have the right answer. Explain it to me. They can't. They don't know how it worked. They just learn how to type the solution and hit enter. And
that's what I learned.
But that can't be the end, right? Be able to explain it and defend why you may have made a choice you made based on what new information you got. And that's what we're trying to help our freshmen learn how to do, which they may not even use until they're later in their careers. But the idea is we want to prepare our students to have jobs where they're making decisions that they're hired to make, not just entry level, do what you're told, but have a skill set to be able to actually make decisions.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that is hire great people and trust them to make the right decisions and know that, like, I always use the terminology. I say, you can't break this one. You can't break it, right? Like, this is a low stakes. Just make the call and run. Yeah. And it's interesting because we're like, all of us in our heart and soul are taught like permission. Can you check this for me? Is this what? And like, just go.
Yeah.
Go. Do it.
If it blows up, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's so like Kelley has always had this really, really strong reputation that I kind of was like, Kelley, the prestigious, but it does. It's an amazing reputation. It sounds like what this Kelley's finally doing, what you're helping finally do is create this like meaningfully different aspect or culture shift in the program today versus not just a few years ago, but since 1960.
Yeah. Yeah. At least in our course. Yeah. The biggest frustration I've had with our course is that because we have 2,300 students every semester in our course. That's a lot. That's thousands of students a year. And to be able to effectively grade what they've provided for homework assignments would be difficult to do at a much smaller level manually. So we do deploy these auto graders to check for things, to be able to make sure they're accurate in what their answers are, which allows us to be able to scale at such a large course. But because of that automation, our instructions had to be so precise. In cell B3, use a sum function to do this. And all they're doing is just, okay. And like they're not thinking through
They don't remember it. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So we're able to now change that whole paradigm and let them just say, hey, here's a data set. Here are some guardrails, but get some insights from it and tell us what you learned about this company based on this data set. And that's going to be a game changer, I think.
That's awesome. So you mentioned you work with freshmen. So you have this front row seat, not only on the next generation, but it's almost like the generation that's on deck, right? And I think that I do it, we all do it, where we're like, content is broken down into 30 seconds via TikTok,
Sure.
attention spans. You hear all the bitching and all the moaning. And like, I wanted to put the positive spin on this. Like, what would you say students today are better at than most of us may realize or take for granted?
Sure. I like to always compare them at 19 to me at 19.
We were folks, before we started recording, we were doing a bit of this anyway. Yeah. Because Brant and I we've known each other forever. Like, yeah, it's been a while.
I am continuously impressed with the vast majority of these students in terms of how they're able to not just handle the coursework, which is hard enough, but because of their desire to network and to be able to do more things. They're involved in clubs. They're involved in fraternities, not just the Greek life ones, but the business ones as well that focus on networking and appropriate attire for presentations. Like they're starting their own clubs. If there's not a club that exists, they are taking the initiative to begin their own club and getting a faculty sponsor to have their club started. I did none of that.
None of that.
I went to my classes. I enjoyed what I was learning. It was phenomenal time. I didn't do any extra.
No.
I didn't,
No.
whatever. These kids are driven for the most part to be successful, whatever that means for them. They still don't understand basic computing stuff, which is surprising to me that they were born with computers in their hand, but they're born with mobile devices in their hands. They're not born with laptops or desktop computers. So the idea of installing software or troubleshooting a missing file or a corrupt file is just beyond their comparison. But it was for me too. I didn't know that but it didn't exist when I was 19.
Yeah. I mean, I had a couple good friends who, like, I built my own PC, I built my first couple. And then when I switched to Macs, super nerd, I also think that the machines progress so much.
Yeah.
It's similar to mechanics, right?
Yeah.
Cars don't just break down on the side of the road as much anymore.
Right.
And there's not much you can take a new Toyota or new Lexus to like the corner garage and have them pop it open and look at, because everything is so much more sophisticated. That's the downside. The upside is they run forever.
Yeah.
They will tell you when they're about to break down. You don't necessarily get stranded on the side of the road as much. There's also that. I remember, when laptops and computers first started to become a thing, how they were always wheezing and breaking and corrupt, and you just don't see as much of that anymore either. So like there is an element of like, they don't learn that because they don't they don't have to.
Yeah. Except when new systems like our IU systems, they get so used to something working. And when just your OneDrive gets turned off because you rebooted your machine and it was not set to auto turn on when it came back on, then your files are not being synced up to the cloud and you don't understand that an application had to run to do that in the first place. Like it just works until it doesn't. So when we're helping them with that, and we have plans to address that kind of with our adapt and defend kind of situation to be able to teach them what the tools they have. But let's pretend you're now unable to use this method for getting your files. Let's figure out what other methods you have, a browser, an app on your phone. Like there could be other ways of getting to something that you know is there, because one path is blocked. Just think through possible scenarios.
I will also draw a correlation anecdotally when, like in 2011, 2012, when I worked at a small agency here in Bloomington, we would hire grads. Anytime there was a new hire in Bloomington, we would have a happy hour that first week. And then we would have a happy hour the second week. To celebrate their second week. We had a happy hour every week to find a reason to celebrate.
Right.
And over the course of the 15 years, and really 10 years before COVID hit and everyone dispersed, totally, I remember my boss and I would talk about, a good friend of mine, we were talking about how we saw the change in grads in that decade.
Sure.
Where grads weren't down with that. They were like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to go home. And I remember we had grads who were like, I remember talking to people like, what do you, like, tell me about your night. What'd you do? I went home, read a book, went to bed around 9. And I remember thinking to myself, like, what? They're not all Puritans, but they're just like, I just wanted to rip heaters and have a few drinks. Like, I was like, that's all I cared about. Like, I didn't do anything outside the norm. They just take better care of themselves. They're much more conscientious not only in how they participate, but how they prepare themselves to be able to participate, in
Their
my
mental
humble
health
opinion.
awareness is way above anyone that I've ever in my generation. Like, they're aware of the importance of mental health, and they will not be afraid to just get the help that they need. And that
Yeah.
is, I think, a good thing to be able to do, because so many people just suffer in silence when they can't understand why they can't keep up, and there's possibly something actually wrong, and they get it addressed. I think that's wonderful. I'm
Um,
not one of those old cranky kids these days. I support them. They are doing some fantastic things.
well, you've always had a great dichotomy for those who don't know. Like you and I have always been around Bloomington, but in when Twitter was not even relatively new, you were my favorite trash talker. You would search the K201 hashtag and look for just students anywhere on Twitter bitching about it and just troll them.
Good times.
Right. Good times. Good times. Just think so much has changed.
They still love the abuse. I am the same smartass I've always been in the classroom, and they eat it up.
Thicker skinned. I'm a
Yeah.
late Gen Xer. We have thin skin. They have thicker skins. They do. Like, I don't just give me the feedback. Whatever.
Yeah.
And like, okay, I guess this is weird. I'm used to dancing around it. Also Midwestern. So
Can I
like
try?
I'm nice to a fault. Are you picking up the subtext here, bud? Like, um, what separates you talked about the vast majority of students um are invested. What separates, in your opinion, the top 5% of students from everyone else? Because everything you just described was the top 5% of students back when I remember it. Now they
Sure.
can't all be the top 5%. Like, what
They
are
can't
those
all be.
elite students who like wow you today? What are they doing?
The elite ones, again, in my course is not for everybody. I mean, they all have to take it, but it takes somebody who wants to learn more about analytics and information systems to be able to want to do more. So it's a biased subset of students who already have an interest in this field, but we are their first introduction to this idea of the computing side of business and what that means. So for some students, this is their first realization. Wow, I actually like to use this technology to solve problems, not just to play around with it. So those in this context of that top 5% are actually applying what they're learning in the classroom to something else outside of the classroom. They're thinking of their father's business, their mom's business, or something else like that, and they're using their skill sets to help build solutions for others. Back when we taught access databases, some students would say, you know what, this might help my dad's small business to track his actual sales as opposed to an Excel spreadsheet. Let me create this relational database structure for him. And they would come to me for help with how to build and get past certain obstacles, but they were applying and extending what they learned. And that for me is just a mind blowing shift to not just learning it to check a box, but learning it to apply it outside the classroom. And for me, that is a separation for it, but not required to do well. It just shows they might now have a career in information systems or business analytics that they never realized was possible because they came in as a finance major, because everyone's a finance major until they take K201, and we
Figure out.
sometimes convert them. Yeah.
It's interesting. They're finally teaching their parents just how gut wrenching it is to have a P&L.
Yep.
Congratulations, mom and
Yay.
dad.
The
Uh,
trauma continues.
Well, but that's fantastic though, because we have a team member here who something he said when he was applying and we first started talking was like it's like people always say, how do you separate yourself? What they did in the summers, he ran a very small, very local social media advertising company. And he helped a couple of businesses find themselves have a firmer footing on Meta, on Facebook and Instagram. And it's not that any of that, it is transferable, but it's like that's the type of process you want to see someone go through outside of just getting the certificate that shows the problem solving ability when they're excited, and that they're excited about something that does translate to being excited about performing for a client in our business.
Because they didn't do it for a homework grade. They did it because they wanted to do it. They wanted to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, and it sounds like shitty advice, and I say it a lot. It's like, how do I get experience when I don't have experience?
Yeah.
And it's like
Volunteer.
you
That's
volunteer, you work for free.
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, I mean, you literally go downtown and you know someone who works somewhere and see if you can do, like everyone wants to go into influencer marketing now. Every grad wants to be an influencer manager, which is hilarious to me because it is TaskRabbit. It is
Sure.
it is like the least like it's the least thought provoking. You forget how, I mean, all you're doing is you're writing a brief, you're reaching out to influencers via a platform, you're getting responses with their rates, you're going back to the client, you're going back to them to negotiate, you're setting them up, and then you're revising the brief, and then you get them a date to go live, or you get the content, the UGC back from them, user generated creative. It's like all you're doing is handing things back and forth. But you get to work with influencers. And that's what everyone wants to do. I keep saying this. So the students are a few years from leaving when you talk to them. But like, what's the most common advice you find yourself giving regarding like the practical application of what they learn? Like what kind of like real world? I'm asking you this, and you've only ever worked for it. Why am I asking you this
I do
fucking
more
question?
things, Tom. I do more things.
I know. You do. I'm giving you shit. You do many more things. But like, what's that real world advice of like, hey, this is some advice I'm going to give you on how this shit really works and what it's really like out there that helps recalibrate that?
I know that I often spend more time counseling those that are not getting into Kelley on what the other opportunities are if you can't get that grade. But for those that are and that are driven, like the idea is that we're going to teach you some things. We can't teach you everything. Like you have to always stay curious. You have to always be wanting to learn more things because you can't expect to grow and to be able to become a leader if you're not willing to always be hungry for new stuff. You know, our course is so far removed from their actual graduation, but students, they almost immediately see a practical application for what they're learning for at least something of use. Whether it's them doing the work themselves or knowing it's so valuable that if they're going to hire people to find the right person to do that work for them. And I try to always emphasize that you can't do all the work yourself unless you want to be an entrepreneur. Then maybe you have to. But at some point, you realize if you don't have this skill set that's strong enough for yourself, know its value and find the appropriate fit to bring somebody in or outsource it or something like that. So my main focus is just, realize there's value in this process. You want to be able to make decisions based off of data that supports what you're doing and also your experience and your human judgment. But there's still value in making decisions if you evaluate possible scenarios based off of data than just throwing a dart into a dartboard and whatever else. So I think that's basically it, is always stay hungry and realize these skills, if you can't do them yourself, they're valuable enough to pay someone well that does.
You struck something there when you talked about not just throwing a dart, like, and you were talking about like data-backed decision making,
Sure.
but then you also mentioned using your own judgment. It's interesting because in my evolution, like we always over-indexed at my first agency towards data-driven, mathematics-focused students, like
Okay.
just super smart, super smart, and and they were very good at reporting what the data said. And in our business, you can be talking to someone who is exactly like you, or you can be talking to a CMO who is like, what the hell did you just say? Tell me in
Right.
plain English, you have 2 minutes. And they would struggle with that. And then the other side of the coin is you have to be able to understand the data somehow, because you can't go in on just vibes like you're Don Draper and get them drunk. You can with some clients, very many, right? Like there's a blend of being able to be personable and use your judgment and explain the basis for how you got to the decision using the data versus here's what the data says. And it's like, well, yeah, I could literally just set this up myself and hit a button every week
Right.
that shows me the data. You already did that. There's a dashboard. I can look at it 24/7.
Yeah.
So what? Always answer the question, so what?
It's why I come from a liberal arts background before I came into Kelley. And so I value that kind of education where you're learning to communicate, learning to see all sides of a problem, learning to be able to have your own human judgment on things. Like I would argue it's probably better to have somebody with that framework of problem solving and communication who can then learn how to use tools to get the actual data than vice versa. It's just harder to sometimes learn the human component of decision making than it is the actual button pushing of getting the data to tell you what to do, because models don't always have every bit of context that that you haven't given it. Same with AI usage. You can't just say it gave AI a prompt, it gave me this solution, because it may have missed some crucial context that you didn't give it, or it drew assumptions out of thin air and applied it to their solution that you have no idea about.
I'm sure there's Sam Altman's probably poring over the data right now of like how many people, you have to adopt it and hone your own craft for what your inputs are.
Yeah.
And you learn over time how to write the prompt in your voice, how to have the dialogue. And for me, AI, from when it started to where it's at now, to me, the biggest changing point was the ability for AI to not just learn, but like look back upon all of the previous conversations and
Maintain
reference
that
them.
memory. Yeah.
And to maintain the memory, even if it still fucks up and drops an M dash in, and I have to be like, that,
I said no M dashes.
son of a bitch. Here's
And
your,
quit
here,
bolding that bullshit for no reason.
stop it. And it's like knowing it's still going to do that from time to time, but also the fact that it's like, well, it literally has been like, well, here's what you said back in December. Is this still relevant? And it's like, damn, this is what it's all worth. It's worth it now because it's got a better memory than I have. Or I can say, like, we talked about this with this client. What are the differences with the problem we're handling now versus the one back then? And I don't have to feed it all the info again.
Right.
It goes and pulls it again. It has absolutely changed it. I mean, when it comes to AI, it's interesting because you're working now with, I mean, in the next few years, you'll be working with students who've only known a world with AI.
Yeah, correct.
And when they come out, they'll run headlong into a C-suite, a boss's boss, an entire team who says, I don't know, kid, like make the AI thing do its thing. This is what we hear. I got a question recently. How is Mixtape Digital leveraging AI in its day to day? And it's like, did AI write that question? Why are you asking? Why are you asking? Why do you want to know? What do you want to know? What problem was like, help me understand why you want to know that, because it sounds like a test grade to check a box.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of CEOs and a lot of like people who have maybe not grown up, not even say CEOs, nothing against the CEOs of the world. I love you all.
Please don't hurt us.
Please hire us. But like seasoned executives are like, how are we leveraging AI, everyone? And everyone comes up with these like stock answers and they go out and they spend a few tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars on a platform. But from your POV, watching students who are basically adapting it immediately, what do you think is a big misconception? Or what would you tell someone who's been around AI and hasn't really used it, doesn't know how to use it, that you think they might be like struggling with as they try to these old heads try to wrap their brains around it?
Yeah, depending upon, again, you want the freshmen or the CEOs?
Give me the thing you would tell the CEO who's like, I'm struggling with how to get my team to use AI and help me understand.
I think it's really important that it's not just a checkbox. I've seen at least memes making fun of the idea. I want AI to use AI to evaluate AI and then use AI to respond to that AI. And they're tracking token usage as if it's some kind of metric that means anything, right? And as a director of my department, I am trying to get my faculty to also use AI, but I have to kind of guide them into what approaches are appropriate for what we do with it, right? So I'm helping them learn how to use it as a strategic partner to brainstorm ideas about lesson plans, about data sets to introduce new concepts to our students, about questions to be able to ask our students and ideas of what possible solutions a freshman mind might come up with to prepare our faculty for just expecting what a student might do with this particular prompt. Like it has to be not just, I'm going to type my Google search and get back this 10 pages of text that are just kind of rambling on about certain things. I want to have an actual purpose to use it for. So I just used Claude for the first time last week. Claude Pro, I used my research funds to purchase a year licensed for it. And as I was preparing for a meeting that happened yesterday. And in that meeting, I'm trying to guide my faculty who are writing a new textbook for us for the next fall version of K201. I wanted to be able to give them some sample outlines for new content we're providing our students, sample PowerPoint slide decks that summarize those outlines to give them an actual clear vision of what their new chapters might look like, to try to get them to not revert back to what we've done for the last 19, 20 years. We can't be stuck in that model. To be able to push our students further, we have to come up with new scenarios, new functions, new tools to be able to teach our students. And if we don't have that skill set already, we have to also leverage some AI tools to help us learn how to best introduce these tools to our students. So it's just about having a purpose in my mind that allows you to go beyond a simple question. Like I want a
Mhm.
process to navigate with AI and then help me and analyze the outputs and make tweaks to it because it wants to get sometimes the AI output's very, very kitschy and very slogan based and kind of makes these weird phrases that are just too, made up. And so you have to kind of switch the tone and have it reiterate. Like all that stuff has to be what you're doing with it to get people to actually see its value, not just make me a Word document on this topic.
It's fascinating because you read the stories about companies having minimum token usage. It's again, it's the clocking in and clocking out. Like, are you in your seat? Like, it's the way to make it. Like, we're just trying to recreate cubicle life again. Like, it's the best way. I mean, we track our time here, and it's one of those things where if if you ask everyone to have 90% of their time to be billable client hours, everyone's going to turn in 90% of their time as billable client hours. Like, they learn how to stay in the clear versus being honest and reporting accurately. And it comes, in my opinion, and admittedly, it's just hard for anyone, myself included. Like, you can't create policies or processes for everybody just to not have to manage the subset of the team that's not adopting it. Like,
Correct.
you're basically creating a policy so you don't have to have a couple uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah. And you
And
have
you're
to have
like,
uncomfortable conversations. I just finished up my annual reviews with my faculty. And sometimes those are uncomfortable, but you have to be able to give them the feedback they need to be better.
it's absolutely fascinating to me. Like, the way people kind of revert back to like what's always worked. My favorite question, I'm gonna ask it last, and then I'll let you go. If and I because it's mixtape digital. And I was also, let me add real quick, when you mentioned the slang and the slogan and like it's like the hello fellow kids thing that GPT does.
Yeah.
Try naming a company call naming a company Mixtape Digital. And it's been, you know how many times I have to smack my GPT on the side of the head because it's like, let's spin some fresh tracks, Tom.
Right.
And they're just
Right.
like, Stop that. Stop that right now.
Don't like
That's
that at
not what we're
all.
saying. The Fresh Mix. How about this title? Tom's Fresh Mix. Here's side. No, stop it. You sound like a DJ in 1988 on Zip 104 in St. Joe County. Anyway, music. If your career had a playlist that had only two or three songs on it,
Mm.
what songs would you choose? And what made you choose these? And I know you're going to say not career, but life, but you do,
I'm
you
going
do
to tell you
you.
this. Listen, I hate these kinds of questions just
I love
because
them.
I love music so much. It's been a part of my life since my infancy. And I can't ever pick a favorite artist or a favorite song, but I will do this. Listen, my career has not, music's a life thing for me, not a career thing. So I will go with a bit of a revealing musical history of me. I grew up with country music. I rebelled on industrial metal, alternative rock in the 90s, early 2000s, and then I found hip hop much later in my. But I will throw out some albums or artists that I think are the most defining for me. When I was a kid, my dad listened to an artist called John Conley, a country singer, and for some reason, the song I Don't Remember Loving You somehow captured my infant brain, and I would be singing it all the time. My brothers would tease me for it or be part of an actual thing. Oh, here comes the song. Brant loves it. So this old country song by John Conley, I Don't Remember Loving You, was one song that I'll put as my life track. The most influential artist, this is kind of hard to admit on this very popular and famous podcast, but Marilyn Manson was the most influential artist of my teenage years, which is kind of hard to admit now, but it's what led me to a degree in religious studies and philosophy. So for me, that artist, the album was Antichrist Superstar when I first was introduced to it. But that just put me on this intellectual journey through all kinds of stuff, which led me to a degree in philosophy and religion. I'm going to put Tom Waits in there just because that gave me a wonderful, calmer, but also drunker, perhaps, playlist to play. Because it also, if you want to learn how to drink bourbon, Tom Waits made me want to learn how to like bourbon. And boy, did I ever learn how to like that. And then for hip hop, I'll toss in some Black Alicious from the Bay Area, California, the duo Chief Excel and Gift of Gab, R.I.P. Gift of Gab. But they kind of turned me on first to this kind of West Coast underground-ish hip hop that took me on a whole new journey of music in my mid to late 20s.
It is representative of what I love about you is that you are have always been militantly open-minded and a defender. I mean this because we've worked together. You're a defender of people who have differing opinions.
Sure.
And I remember like someone would have an opinion and we would like be at the bar and start like giving them shit. And you were inclined to jump in on that side and fight the good fight and
Think
defend
about their
them.
perspective for a minute, right? Yeah.
I love it. Brant, always a wonderful time. You're going to be back on and we're going to keep talking because next time we're just going to drink through it.
Yeah.
Which I don't think you can be in your office then, but we'll figure it out.
I got it.
Just have a thermos.
What are rules?
What are rules? This is higher ed. Thank you sincerely for making time. I really appreciate it. Delightful conversation. Means the world to me. Great catching up.